There is one God, and there is nothing wrong with you. He said, you are loved by your Creator exactly.
I get the chills. I get the chills from that. That's
Yeah.
so wonderful.
And he said, you don't have to do anything to be loved by God. You're part of creation. It's done. It's already done. And it was done before you got here. Because it puts good into the world. He goes, it's not for a reward or some fear of punishment later. He said, the good you see in the world, that's the reward for doing good. And we don't know what happens next. We just know what happens now. And this is the gift. And you have to take care of it. I like a tall glass of whiskey. She likes a little shot of wine. Any day there's a way I can see her face. It's a day when the sun shines, and I am my beloved's. My beloved is mine.
This is another episode of Golda's Girls, and my co-host for today is Rachel Rappaport, and our very interesting guest is Joe Buchanan.
Hi.
Before we go to our program, I would like to ask you a favor. We can see that 91% of the people that are returning viewers do not subscribe and can then also not make a comment. It will be so helpful for us that if you can do it, that you do that, that you support us in this way, in this way, if you like our videos, of course, otherwise you wouldn't return. So that would be great. Okay, welcome, Joe. And I'd love to hear a little bit from your extensive bio from Rachel.
Okay, I'm just going to say a couple of things very briefly, and then Joe will fill in the blanks. So, born in Texas, Joe Buchanan makes country music that's steeped in Torah. He converted to Judaism after discovering that his wife of 13 years was Jewish, and he began creating music to share the healing they both found. He's recently been brought into the Texas Country Music Association and the Recording Academy, where he's working to help create the first Jewish music category at the Grammys. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. How's that going, by the way?
It's tough. We've got a lot of great folks in the Academy right now that are all sort of working on this same goal. We need to have a lot of releases coming out within a particular year in order to really be qualified as a category. So we're looking at folks who are working on projects and kind of where's the project at and how can we help out? And so it's this big team effort. I will say the Academy is very much behind the idea.
That's great. That's great.
They have been incredibly supportive at all levels. So we are now just working to see if that's a category that can be created. It takes a lot of kind of coordinated effort from the artist side of the community as well as the Academy side of it. So both sides are we're just all working on it. It's quite a process, but we're doing it.
Well, that's so amazing, and that would be great if it could actually happen. So anyway, I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm so excited and looking forward to learning more about you and your music. And I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to convert to Judaism? Did you grow up around Jewish people? Did you have a lot of dealings with them? And also, how did your family react to that decision?
That's a lot. In one sentence.
No, I can't wait to tell you the story. I will say I can answer the family side of it very quickly and very easily. The other side of it is a bit of a tale, if you don't mind me telling that story.
No.
On the family side of it, I will just say I am very close with my wife's side of the family. That's pretty much the whole answer.
We get the picture.
Yeah, you get the picture, and not uncommon for a lot of people who join the tribe have very similar experiences.
That's so sad.
It's incredibly difficult, but we also recognize that's not our fault, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's so sad to hear.
Yeah, but there's a great story on the other side of the answer too. So
okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, so I grew up in well, my family. I was born in just outside of Houston, Texas. So I grew up in Houston, but we also had a ranch down in South Texas. So I'd spend a number, period of every year down there at the ranch, and then the rest of it here in the city. So I was kind of grew up with like a foot in the street and a foot in the river, you know. So it was kind of a really good way to grow up, pretty whole and complete. But I didn't grow up around anyone that I knew was Jewish. I never met anyone who was Jewish. I never heard any anti-Semitism. I never heard any jokes about Jewish people. I never heard anything about Jewish people at all. And admittedly, it would have been strange if someone came up and was like, you know, hi, my name's Harold and I'm Jewish. You know, they just people didn't do that. But I never saw a Star of David. I never saw a kippah. I never saw any of that stuff. And my grandfather, I remember I was pretty young. He calls me over to the window and he said, I lived with him till I was 6 years old. And he said, Joe, look outside. You can see God in the world, in the way the world is put together, and you can see God in the way people are, you know, the good deeds and all that kind of stuff. And I believed in a creator. It made a lot of sense. And I said, well, what would God want from me? Pretty fair question for a kid who believed in God. And he goes, just live a good life. I think that's all God can want. Made total sense to me as a kid. I moved in with my folks when I was 6, and I started, my parents had no interest in organized religion at all. It didn't belong in the house. We couldn't talk about it. That was the end of it. So I would stay the night with all my friends on Saturdays, which meant I got to go to a lot of places on Sunday morning. They went to a lot of different churches. And I started running into some stuff that was hard for me to hear. The idea of, you know, that there was something between me and God all of a sudden, and that I wasn't good enough for God the way I was, and kind of damaged goods, and, you know, my soul was in danger, and like all this kind of stuff that to me was very new information. And I had a hard time with it as a kid. It didn't make sense to me. And I found out some things, you know, and by the way, anybody who believes that stuff, nothing against those folks. It didn't sit right with me personally. And I remember finding out some things. I joke about this, but it's true. Like, I found out you can't ask questions at mass. I remember raising my hand one time, and I was with a friend's family, and they were like, Joe, put your hand down. And I said, when can we ask questions? And they're like, never. So,
Very
you know,
cute.
we have this phrase, right? 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. And so I just figured, like, maybe this isn't for me, and maybe folks are right, and I'm the problem. It was something I was hearing at home. It was something I was hearing when I would try to find, you know, places where I could pray and all that. I was hearing the same message, that I was damaged goods as I was. And so I figured, I'll just walk away from all this. And at some point, God and I are going to settle up, and we're going to see what's what. And I'm okay with that. So fast forward, you know, I wasn't even 21 yet. And I'm working in this store we sold board games and Dungeons and Dragons at the time. And this lady walks in, and I lost my mind. I mean, I fell so madly in love with my wife the second I saw her. Love at first sight.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it.
Love at first sight is such a real thing, and my wife will tell you it took her some time. But I completely fell for this lady, and thankfully a mutual friend introduced the two of us. And me, like a fool, she said, yeah, and Joe plays guitar. And I said, yes, I do. And I felt so silly saying that. And I said, can I play you a song? And I did, and we got married shortly after. So that worked out. And
Wait a minute. Was the song that did it?
I don't think it was the song that did it.
No, you cannot say, Rochelle. You cannot say that.
But
You will never admit that.
I will say this. It may have been the song that did it, but it was definitely not the song was the reason she married me, and has stayed with me. We're celebrating 26 years of marriage this year.
Oh, wow.
26, mazel tov.
Thanks. And so it kind of wild part of this, we start going to these different, I said, do you believe in God? And she's like, that's not really my thing. And I said, okay. I said, well, when I was a kid, I struggled real hard with, you know, finding kind of a house of worship for myself, because I disagreed with everybody all the time. And I said, well, maybe that I'm older now, it'll be different. I jokingly tell folks when I do this talk, I say, you know how like when you're a kid and you don't like beets, but then you get older, you kind of like beets now. I said, so maybe it's different, you know? So, and she was like, great, I'll go with you. So we go to a little place down the road. She won't say any of the prayers. She won't sing any of the songs. She won't do anything. And I was really kind of shocked, but I was like, you don't want to jump in? She's like, I'm just here for you. So I ran into the same difficulties I had before with a disagreement with the things I was reading. And so we just stopped doing it altogether, because it wasn't for her, and it turned out it wasn't for me. Fast forward one last time, 13 years or so into our marriage, and we are standing outside the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. We're both shaking from the experience and having gone through there, and your mind tries to make sense of the things that you see, but it's a place that doesn't make sense. Even when they can spell out, this is how it happened, this is why, this is how people bought into this. Like, they can spell it out, and you can still hear that and go, what? And so we're standing there shaking, crying on the sidewalk, and she looks at me and she says, I want to get in touch with my people's faith. And I said, who are your people?
Wow.
And I'm like, that's a concerning thing when someone says my people. You should be like like on the lookout,
What about me?
what's happening. And she goes, I'm Jewish. And I said, what? I said, what? I said, hold on, when did you get Jewish? And she's like,
That's
what are you
amazing.
she goes, what are you talking about? I was born Jewish. And I start mansplaining to my wife. I'm like, you can't be born Jewish. And she's like, Joe, that's how it works. And I said, I don't know if you know how that works. And she's like, clearly you don't know how it works. And I was like, that's true. I said, and she goes, my mom's Jewish. And I said, I know your mom's Jewish. And she's like, Joe, that makes me Jewish. And I was like, what? And she goes, our son is Jewish. I looked at her and I said, does he know that? This is a true story. She told me, she goes, I have a Star of David necklace in my jewelry box. I said, yeah, but you never wear it. I thought that was like your mom's or something, or like you're honoring your mom. And she was like, the first date we went on was my cousin's Jewish wedding. And all I could say was, I know the AC went out and it was a free open bar. It was the best wedding I've ever been to, but I didn't know that made you Jewish. And I always tell people this because it's a wild thing to hear, especially in Jewish communities when we talk about this. But outside of those walls and that experience, if you didn't know someone who was Jewish growing up, have a Jewish best friend, date someone, married someone, whatever, or grow up with it yourself, that's not a common knowledge piece of information. And she thought the whole time I knew. So April grew up in a military family, and they lived all over the place. So there was no synagogue, there was no community, there was no camp. There were family traditions that were held on to that just filtered out of the house over the years. So she held on to her identity, but didn't know anything about it. So I told her, I promise I'm getting to the front door on this story. I told her,
No,
I
it's
said,
so
Very
fascinating.
fascinating.
oh, thanks. I become very aware sometimes that I feel like I'm over talking. I told her, I said, well, I don't know anything at all. And she was like, yeah, I don't either. I said, well, let's find someone who does. And we spent some time on our own, I think like a little over a year or so, just trying to learn what we could. And the internet was not a great place for information at the time. And so finally we were like, let's go somewhere. So we found a rabbi at a synagogue 20 minutes from our house, because I love things that are close. And I was like, this is 20 minutes away, major Jewish community, an hour away. Let's do the 20-minute trip. So we head down the road and we're at Shar HaShalom, which is a little conservative synagogue just south of Houston. I walk through the doors, and this man, this Rabbi Stuart Federow, one of my best friends in the whole world now. And we walk in the door, and this is what he says. He goes, hi, Stuart the Rabbi. And I looked at my wife. I was like, this guy is great. Like, let's do this. And he goes, what can I do for you? I said, well, my name is Joe. This is my wife, April's son, Nathan. They're Jewish, and I'm not. And I said, but none of us know what that means. And he goes, well, you want me to just like spell it out for you? I said, yeah, that'd be great. And he goes, all right, here's the deal. And he looked right at me and he said, there's one God and there's nothing wrong with you. He said, you are loved by your creator exactly.
I get the chills. I get the chills from that. That's
Yeah.
so wonderful.
And he said, you don't have to do anything to be loved by God. You're part of creation. It's done. It's already done. And it was done before you got here.
That was the opposite of what you had been hearing when you were a child.
Opposite. Yeah. And he said, you do good because it puts good into the world. He goes, it's not for a reward or some fear of punishment later. He said, the good you see in the world, That's the reward for doing good. And we don't know what happens next. We just know what happens now. And this is the gift, and you have to take care of it. And it was like 30 years of therapy all at once.
Wow.
And you often, it's wild. You don't realize that you're carrying a weight until it suddenly comes off your shoulders, often because somebody helped you get that off your shoulders.
So easily solved.
Yeah, it changed everything. And I said, well, I want to do this. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I want to do this. Can I do this? And he's like, sure, yeah, we have services of this. And I'm like, no. I want to do this. Can I be Jewish? And thankfully, he didn't, in my opinion, do that nonsense of turning people away 3 times. He was like, absolutely, be here Wednesday. And so I started the Intro to Judaism classes, and I got here as fast as I could. It turns out you can't rush that process.
No, you can't.
You really
They
can't
don't
rush
make
it.
it that easy.
Yeah, there's no like, toll lane to get through it. But I was so, it was like coming to a well, and you didn't realize you've been in the desert your whole life. And then all of a sudden, here's this place, and it's kind of been right next to you the whole time. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
All the beauty that we found in studying Judaism, and all the beauty that we found in spending time with this community throughout this process. So many of those values my wife carries already. They're part of her, and she was setting the table in a sense for all of this for the whole time we've been together. And I started writing music to help me understand the stuff I was going through, and so I could learn more. I was so thirsty for this and so hungry for it, and that's how it started.
It's amazing. Amazing story. What a journey. How long did that take?
It
From
took,
the time you walked into
Yeah.
that synagogue and met
yeah.
that rabbi?
Well, he was like, I'm in the middle of an Intro to Judaism class now, so you can, if you want to wait till that one ends and come. I'm like, no, can I get in there right now? He's like, absolutely. So I went through like, a whole class and a half, which takes a little over a year. So it took about a year and a half going through all the holidays, studying every week, going to services Friday, Saturday, being involved in everything and really ingrained and part of the community. I always tell people too, like, you go through all that not to be so, so God can accept you as one of the Jewish people, because Ruth didn't do all that. She said, your people are my people, your God is my God. I'm here, like, took that oath and did it.
Done.
I always tell, done, we're done. But she, you leave all that other belief system that you may have. You say no, and you accept this, right? But you have to do that. Well, the reason for all this learning and classes and spending time, it's not so much so that you can be accepted. It's so that you can accept that, right? It's so that you can sit there and go, these are my people. This is what I want to do. This is what I believe. This is what I will stand alongside and stand with no matter what. And you have to want to make that such a key part of your life. That's why the time is there. That's why it matters
Yeah,
so
of
much to
course.
go through all
Yeah.
that. And yeah, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I tell people all the time, we do this talk called Choosing to be Chosen, and we open it up to a Q&A, and all these folks who have been through the process, or they have family members that have, they start sharing their stories, and it's a beautiful experience to have. It usually in congregations, often where that talk is very taboo.
Oh,
And they're like, well, we don't want to have to talk about, conversion, because it's like you were always here. And I'm always like, no, I wasn't always here. And I want to talk about it because I love this, and I don't want to lose sight of what was before, because it really helps me appreciate this so much.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's been great. It's just been great.
This is so interesting. The way you speak, it really comes from your heart.
Oh,
And
thanks.
I know that the rabbi got that too, because it is a good motivation. We had in the Netherlands, where I'm from, there was like in the 70s, 80s, there were like 1,000 people a year that wanted to convert for for several reasons. Everybody had their own reason.
Yeah.
And that's over entirely with the situation and how that shifted. And I think that a lot of people, that's my impression, that wanted to convert in those years. It's after the Holocaust. And in the Netherlands, it was a huge shock. Of course, 90% of the Dutch Jews were murdered. So there's always a lot of talk about that. And there's also guilt and shame and all that. And now it's totally the other way around. And my Jewish friends and family, they're like in hiding and fearful and think, can they leave or not? Yeah. So do you notice that too? Because I don't know, do you notice anti-Semitism in your work? Do you feel the change since the last 1.5 years, since October 7th?
Oh, a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
A tremendous amount. I mean, I haven't had anyone. You know, it's wild, and I'm going to kind of name these folks a little later on, in a sense, name them in a sense. But
Yeah.
I have a lot of people who they love to fire hose the comment section of videos that I put out. It may just be me sharing a song about my wife and I having an anniversary, and because I have a Star of David, it's like the most terrible things that you can possibly say to another
Yeah.
human being. Horrible, horrible, horrible.
Yeah.
But I very rarely ever have someone say something like that to my face. And I
Courage and guts, which they
mean,
don't have.
and if someone were to come up and say to me, I don't like your people, I would appreciate that more than kind of the hiding, in my
Right.
opinion, super cowardly way
Right.
of talking about stuff. Because if you come up to my face and you say something, at least we can possibly have a conversation.
Yeah.
We can possibly have a conversation and talk as individuals. And we may walk away totally disagreeing, but we had a conversation like real people.
Yeah.
And that's how that stuff anyway, so I don't have a lot of people come up and say stuff to my face. I hear a lot of it behind my back. And I did have an instance recently. Speaking of my wife, we were celebrating our anniversary last year, and we were at Disney World of all places. And the crowd in the area that we were in was so thick that when you moved, you sort of moved with the crowd. You know, it was like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not great. Even though I do music and I lead, prayer and I'm around big groups, really tight spaces are hard for me, physically hard for me. But we're in there and this guy comes past, pushing past people, and he pointed at my Star of David and he dropped an FU about pretty intensely, but under his breath, and then shot past me. I turned around and couldn't find the guy, and I wish I would have been able to find him, but I couldn't. And because I stood there looking for a second, and I was like, okay, we got to keep moving. That was it. And in my opinion, that was still pretty cowardly too, because he wasn't willing to
Right.
stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do the world of anti-Semitism has definitely opened up to me in pretty big ways, especially because I'm very public with what I do and it's out there. But also in spending time with communities, hearing people's stories, outside of the news cycle and what you can read about and learn about, hearing people's personal experiences and praying with people, after they've experienced some things in their lives, spending time with Holocaust survivors and hearing their stories. And so, yeah, that is a world that did not exist for me before all of this. I was never around people that, and if they were like that, they kept it really buried deep down.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't, and people ask me, they're like, oh, well, you're from the South. Texas is a little different from the South, but I never heard that stuff at all. And we have the largest conservative synagogue in the country here in Houston.
Really?
What is it? Is it B'nai? Is something Yeshurun?
It's Beth Yeshurun.
Beth
It's
Yeshurun.
Congregation
Well,
Beth Yeshurun.
I lived in Houston and I went to that synagogue many years ago. So yeah, I lived there for a while.
It's the biggest in the country. I did High Holy Day services a number of years there, and we have a ton of synagogues, but they're all back in the neighborhoods. They're not on the main highways. So like, unless you
That was in Meyerland, I think.
right, unless you happen to work in that area or you drive by, like you'll never see those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't part of the world as far as, and the only time we heard about the Jewish people when I was a kid in history class was for about 2 weeks when they were talking about World War II. And it was only a little sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terrible thing to be the only thing you know about a people and to not even know, a fraction of the whole story.
Yeah.
So it's been definitely, it's a world that's been opened up to me, and I'm trying to do as much as I can to support it, and And to be a good bridge too. I think there's a lot of this that comes from things that people grew up with and were taught when they were growing up that aren't true and they don't know any different. I believe that people know what they know. And for the most part, that may not be their fault, but then there is a lot of things that are.
Yeah.
And I'm trying really hard to be a good bridge to say, and a door holder to say, this is who we are. This is what we do. And all we want is to live in the world alongside everybody else. That is the
Right.
only thing that we want. And it's not asking a lot. We're 0.02% of the population. That's it. That's it.
Right.
And if I can be a good bridge, if I can be a good doorway to say, hey, come on in, you can sit with us, learn with us, let's talk, let's get to know each other as neighbors, then I'll feel like I've done something good, you know.
Wow. People are like you are very needed
Oh,
Yeah.
because
that's
it
nice
looks
to hear.
like you're not so much acting out of fear or hiding. You don't have those trauma responses, so to
Right.
speak. And your courage and your honesty in this, I really appreciate that. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
I think it's good that you say it's an interesting point you make when you said trauma responses
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have that.
No.
And I know a lot of people who do.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah, I was shocked the first time I saw it, and I felt horrible, horrible. We were in a Chili's, a Chili's at the airport. I just come from a big Jewish music conference. I now teach at this conference every year and help mentor new artists and stuff. But it was one of my first times going, and all these different musicians and stuff, and we all were like, we have got to get something to eat. And there was a Chili's. So we're like, great, if nothing else, we can sit down, get a glass of tea or whatever. So there's a ton of us at this table. And I said, oh, we should say a motzi. Anybody down for that? And they're like, yeah. So I asked them for a slice of bread. I said, can you bring us a slice of bread? So they did. Just a piece of Texas toast, you know. And so I held it up, and we all sang the blessing. And I didn't think much of it. We weren't being loud and obnoxious. We just kind of set it to our table. And one of my good friends became very visibly withdrawn, and it absolutely scared them. And we talked about it later on, and they're someone who leads in their community openly all the time, but that is very different from doing it out in the world.
Yeah.
And that was a trauma response that they had, and I learned about that. We talked about their family, everything they've been through, and I mean, on the one hand, I felt terrible. I also don't believe we need to hide those things, in who we are. But I was like, well, how can I, how can I help not create that situation next time, or what can I do to help that situation? And yeah, yeah,
Have
it's
you been to Israel ever?
I have. I had the absolute wonderful opportunity to be taken out there by a community in 2023. And I led music and prayer every day for 2 weeks. We went all over the country, visited all these places. And at the end of this year, in November 10th through the 18th, I'll be leading a trip to Israel
Oh, wow.
with Rabbi Mark Blazer, and we're going to go visit the site of the Nova Festival, talk to survivors. We're going to meet with people all up and down the country, and then we're going to do a big concert out there. So
That's so wonderful. So what do you want to achieve with the music you make? You work all around? Can you explain a little bit more about what you do?
absolutely, yeah. So all the music is, I mean, I could tell you, it's all country music. It's what I grew up with. It's
Yeah.
the music that moves my heart and moves my feet. My wife and I will dance to just about any good country song that comes on, no matter where we are, grocery store, like we can,
Nice.
we can be at the DMV, just going. And but so it's all country music, and the because that's authentic for me. I didn't know Jewish music
Yeah.
was a thing when I started. I just started with this.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
glad I didn't know, because I probably wouldn't have done this. I would have been like so concerned about trying to make, that music. But it's all Jewish and all inspired by Jewish things. And the goal in putting it out in the world is to share some of the healing that kind of sort of came our way through all the things that we learned, putting that in song and trying to do some good. So the purpose for the music existing is that in Jewish communities, I want to lift up and celebrate those communities, celebrate who we are in the most authentic way that I can and the most wholehearted way that I can. And then also for folks beyond those communities to see how much we're just folks like them. And so I tend to write in a very sort of down to earth storytelling style. I do have some Hebrew in my songs, but it's not my first language. So it's not where I naturally go right out of the gate to write. So a lot of the songs are in English, and some of the values based songs, unless you were Jewish, you probably wouldn't even pick that up. But if you were Jewish, you'd be like, oh, I know exactly what this is about. And then
Yeah.
some songs are very clearly about Jewish things. So, the hope is to uplift communities and celebrate who we are as a people, and then also to hold the door for folks who might be coming by that are curious and want to know more.
That's awesome.
You know what I was wondering? Do you feel that there's some kind of natural connection between the genre of country music and Judaism? Because you seem to have incorporated the two together. Is it because your first love is country music, that's what you knew, and then Judaism was the next love? Was it because you were trying to put them together, or did you see some kind of connection naturally between the two?
I thought the connection was pretty natural, and it was just what I was doing. And then the more I thought about it, because I kept writing, and the first person that heard me do anything, outside of April, was my rabbi, who she thought I should share something with. I didn't plan on doing this, by the way. It was just to help me learn more. And he heard it, and he was like, "Great, keep doing that, and let's go get you in front of people." And so he had a huge hand in that. But country music at its core country songs are stories about people, their struggles. There's a narrative to the songs. It's about victories and celebration and heartbreak and loss and tragedy and joy, and it's about real people going through real things, and it's very narrative driven. And it turns out there's a lot of country songs in the Torah, and our people are full of stories,
Yeah.
very real stories. And so it makes, the more I've done it, the more it has continued to just make sense.
So have you come across other country musicians who are Jewish? I know that I was in the music business many, many years ago, and there was some guy named Ronnie Cartman, who was a Jewish guy. I don't know what happened to him. I didn't get involved in managing him, but he did country music. And other than Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys, I'm not really aware of too many country musicians that are Jewish. Are they out there?
Definitely. They're definitely out there. There's definitely some that are Jewish that don't, it's not part of their music very much. They're maybe just making, the country music they're making, but they're not trying to make Jewish themed country music.
Yeah.
Although they are Jewish themselves. There's a fella named, I think his name is Omar Netzer, who is in Nashville.
Sounds Israeli.
Yeah, I believe he is.
Yeah.
I don't know him that well. I was just introduced to him, and most of his songs are country music songs. I know he is Jewish, and I think I've seen him with his Star of David. So he it's out there that he's Jewish. There's a fellow named Troy Breslow, who is a dear friend of mine, who sings on the new album with me, and he is very openly Jewish, and he works it into his songs, and his music really reminiscent of classic country, and he tells stories about what it was to grow up and in Jewish. He sings songs about being discriminated against, but he right alongside heartbreak and loss and all the other stuff. So he also does a bit of that too, but there are more moments from his life. I will tell you, I met Kinky a couple of times. I want to tell you my Kinky Friedman stories. I think you'll get a real kick out of it.
Well, he was a character. I know that.
He was such a hoot. We were at an airport together and weren't traveling together. We're on opposite sides of this terminal. He's got a black suit on, a black hat. I seem to remember him chewing an unlit cigar in the airport. It wasn't lit. He just had it in his mouth. And he had his guitar case. I also was wearing my black hat and carrying my guitar case. We both spotted each other, and he kind of does this, And I sort of did that, and we start walking towards each other. It was so like we were going to draw, you know? And I knew exactly who he was. I don't think he had any clue who I was, but he saw my Star of David, and he goes, he goes, you playing a lot of synagogues? And I said, yes, sir, I do quite a bit. I said, but I got to ask you, are you Kinky Friedman? And he said the coolest thing I've ever heard. He goes, well, son, I used to be. And I was like, oh, come on, man, you got to be real cool to say something like that.
Wow.
And so we just kind of talked a little bit. And then thankfully, many years later, I was invited out to Kinky's Ranch to play some music for his camp. He has a Gold Star camp for kids who have lost a parent in the line of service as police officers, firefighters, military. And all these kids come to this big Echo Hill ranch that he runs. And it's an amazing place. And I came out there to do some songs for the kids and spent some time with Kinky on his porch. And he was so sweet. He goes, it's Cowboy Joe. When I walked up, and I was like, oh, come on, that's so cool. And yeah, we sat on his porch and listened to the hummingbirds. And it was great.
So
Yeah,
nice.
just before he passed. Just before he passed.
Really?
Oh my, yeah. Well, would it be a good idea that you sing a song with us for
I
us?
would love to. And I know we've talked about what songs to sing, but I've talked about my wife so much. Can I play you a song, a love song that's on the new album?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah, of course, of course.
specifically inspired by a piece that I think you'll probably be familiar with, the I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine.
That's
Right. That's right. And the song is called My Beloved because I'm not that clever. All right, here we go. Can you hear that okay?
Yes.
All right, here we go. I tell her she's everything. She says I'm alright. I like a tall glass of whiskey. She likes a little shot of wine. Any day there's a way I can see her face. It's a day when the sun shines. And I am my beloved's. My beloved is mine. Well, it ain't always easy, but it's always good. We don't agree on everything, but we agree where we should. And if I need to know that God loves the world, she's the sign. I am my beloved's. My beloved is mine. I ain't got no rhythm and she's the dancing queen. The belle of the ball, she took me right off the wall, showed me what love means. Anytime we get the chance, you can bet we'll dance in the kitchen or the grocery store. You know you found the right one when the world is your dance floor. I tell her she's everything. She says I'm alright.
Wow. I'm a fan.
Also one.
Oh, thank you.
We will join.
Beautiful song, and what a
So
fabulous
nice.
voice.
Oh, thank you
Your
very
voice
much.
is the perfect voice for this.
That's very
Fantastic.
kind. Thank you.
How can we hear you, hear more of you? And we will put it in the description down, of course.
Oh, thanks.
But what
Yeah.
else is it? But is there something you would like to share that for the upcoming things also in the near future?
Sure, absolutely.
For
Well,
dates,
right.
That's something that if you send me an email, we'll be sure to post it.
Oh, thank you very much. We have a website. If I did my job right, I should be the first thing that comes up if folks go looking for me. But on the website, joebuchananmusic.com. It's got links to
Okay.
all kinds of stuff. And the last album that we did is called Back from Babylon. And it's it's streaming all over the place. Bunch of Jewish country, a little bit of Southern rock in there. You can definitely check that out.
Awesome.
And we're on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram as well.
I am going to find it oh, great.
Thank you.
Now, let's now maybe move on to what we usually do at the end. We share, unfortunately, our anti-Semites of the week. And I would like to ask you, Rachel, to start.
Okay, well, I picked Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania because he is a self-hating Jew. He just donated a $5 million grant to a mosque where the imam said the Jews are the vilest of all people, and he quoted the hadith which promoted the idea of the extermination of the Jewish people. So Josh Shapiro did this because he's a political animal. He would sell his mother out. He did this because it was a dig at the Trump administration. So it is totally disgusting to me and despicable that of all the people, a Jew should be doing this to such a hateful organization. So that was my pick.
So, oh yeah, it's a heavy one. Joe, which one did you bring today?
So I was going to say that definitely gets my vote, 100%. But I want to additionally say something else if I could.
Sure.
I want to. This goes out to anybody who's on social media. So there are. I want to talk about the people who fire hose the comment section, because there's tons and tons and tons of both bots and anti-Semitic folks out there who are actively trying to take over your social media feed. If you are somebody who puts out Jewish content, anti-Semites will flood the comment section, and their goal is to scare you enough that you become bothered by it and decide not to post anymore. And instead, what you absolutely should do is not engage with them in the slightest, just block and delete every single time. It takes tremendous vigilance, but if you think about your social media area as a community, if someone were to come into your synagogue saying these kinds of things in the middle of a service or stuff like that, they would 100% not just be escorted out, but you would probably call the cops. So taking strong action and not engaging with those folks is super important if you think about it like a community. So it goes out to all the anti-Semites who want to flood comment sections to keep us from showing up on social media in the way that we do.
Delete, and block.
Delete and block, delete and block every time. Don't engage.
Thank you for saying that. So what is your anti-Semite of the week?
Oh, well, that was my anti-Semitic.
It was
That's what I've been doing.
How to deal with anti-Semites,
for hours every day, crawling through getting these folks. But yeah, Shapiro also gets a good nod from me. But
oh my gosh,
so all the cowardly commenters that get in the comment section.
It's very shocking. I did not know before October 7th that there are so many hating people in the world, with so much misplaced or even loaded with so many lies, and like the lies and have a joy to live accordingly. And I think if there was not such a strict punishment for killing people as is in America, that's the only reason that some people keeps away from doing that. I think there's so much hate that I didn't know it existed. So anyway,
you know what? I just want to make a comment about that, Carla. I had a different reaction when October 7th happened, even though it was horrific and shocking because of the level of brutality. I was not surprised by October 8th and afterwards and all the anti-Semitic rhetoric, because my parents were both Holocaust survivors, and when I was a kid, my mother would say, "You know, it can happen again," and I thought, she's just paranoid because she's a Holocaust survivor and that happened to her, so she assumes that. So anyway, I grew up hearing it all the time from my parents that we were so hated, and that I think it just was not in vogue to express anti-Semitic comments. And so it was always there. It just was under the radar and kept silent. So now it's in
Out and about.
So anyway, sorry, go on with.
No, yeah. I grew up in a little bit more environment. I have only my mom who survived, and my dad is not Jewish. And my parents were more like building hope for the future and this never again, never again, never again. Well, never again is now, ever. Yes, indeed. Never, ever, ever again, but ever it is. So my anti-Semites for the week, they probably will be offended if I call them that, are the 15 Democrats that were supporting the ridiculous request of Bernie Sanders, another self-hating Jew, and also suffering from the syndrome of reverse loyalty. And I am like, I understand that people can say, well, I don't want to participate. I don't want this, I don't want that. Everybody has a different opinion how the money would be spent from the government, right? So I can understand that, but to refuse to give to Israel the support in order to defend itself, which is already so hard, that is really so shocking to me, because it means suicide for 9 million people, not only Jews, but also the 2 million Arabs, right? And other people that live there and the Christians. So it is just a horrible, horrible thing to do. And it's not a peace solution. It is just like, yeah, very weak, instead of teaching so many people the truth, because all the lies, like Israel is totally legal. Israel is not stolen land. And I don't understand this world, but let's not go there. This is negative enough. Anyway, yeah. So let's go to the hero for you, Rochelle.
Okay, my hero is, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Louai Ahmed. And he's a Yemeni Swedish journalist and influencer, and he's against radical Islam and anti-Semitism. He considers himself to be a Zionist. He spoke at the UN Human Rights Council, and he was calling out their hypocrisy. He was asking, why is it that when Arabs killed millions of Arabs, the world doesn't even blink? There's no outrage, no protests. And so he's somebody who has the courage to speak the truth. And he had to leave Yemen, of course, because he also is openly gay. So he had to leave Yemen in order to be able to speak without threat of his life being taken.
Yeah.
So that's who I picked.
Very much respect for him. I got many death threats by reposting his stuff on his videos on LinkedIn, on TikTok. So only reposting him gave me so many death threats and all kinds of other rubbish. Okay, something nicer again for you, Joe. What is your hero of the week?
It's very easy for me to say my wife, but I talked to my wife and I said, because she absolutely is, but I said, all right, I said, I don't think I can just name you, even though I would. I said, who would we think of beyond our house when we think of who's a hero out there that we look up to? And we both immediately thought of Rabbi Federow for a number of reasons. Not only because, he's a great, by the way, we got remarried on our 18th anniversary under the chuppah, signed the ketubah, and he led the ceremony. It was beautiful. But he does so much work that is counter-missionary work. He works with Jews for Judaism. He does so much support for, how do we do more to sort of let folks know, more about who we are. He puts so much of that out there, trying to teach, Hebrew in the most public way possible with this like Jumpstart Hebrew program, learn how to read it in an hour kind of thing that he does. And he puts out all these books, and he's just always going, what's the next thing I can do to uplift and support our people? It's on the forefront of his mind, and he is so incredibly passionate about it, and one of the kindest and big-hearted people I've ever met. Absolutely fearless in every sense of the word. and with a heart that it's so big you can barely contain it. I absolutely love that man, and I do often think about when I write anything new, I send it to him, and
Oh, so nice.
I go, what's your thought on this? Like, all the time. He's a huge hero of mine. Huge hero of mine.
What a
Wonderful.
blessing for you to have him in your life.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
I
that
agree.
that you express this the way you do. That's so it really you make my day. You know,
Oh,
such a
thanks.
beautiful. It's such a
Yeah.
beautiful, enriching, yeah, uplifting story and remarks that you make. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, my heroes, I have a few, but I chose this time Saudi Arabia that forbids and bans all public noise and whatever it is about Palestine. So no free Palestine, not from the river to the sea. It's all totally forbidden, which is a huge step for
Right.
a very big country to do that. Because you brought it up just now, where are the sponsors from the world and other Arabs are killed by Arabs? It doesn't matter when the Jews involved, even with all the misnumberings of Hamas saying how many people died, like 20,000 babies were killed. No, they were not at all. And now they are starting to admit it. But the news media is not correcting their false stories that they put on the market. It's just super sad. So that Saudi Arabia took this step, I really, really am very impressed with that. And I hope that it comes from a sincere place. It looks like, because they know the consequences also if they risk something with this. And I really have a lot of respect for that people dare to speak out for what they believe in. Because not all the other Muslim brothers do agree with this. It is a huge step. It's a huge mark. So thank you so very much, everybody, for watching, and specifically our special guest. And it was such a joy to have you on. Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom and Pesach,
Yeah.
Chag Pesach Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Yeah.
Shabbat
Chag
Shalom. Thanks for
Sameach.
having me.